ngay sau buổi gặp gỡ nói chuyện với một số người trong cộng đồng người Việt tại quận Cam vào ngày 1 tháng 6 năm 2013 tại Le-Jao Center thuộc trường đại học cộng đồng Coastline Community College, Đại sứ David Shear đã dành cho giới truyền thông một buổi họp báo ngắn. Ngoài các cơ quan truyền thông tiếng Việt trong cộng đồng, còn có một số phóng viên từ các cơ quan truyền thông dòng chính ở địa phương. Trong khoảng thời gian ngắn ngủi chừng 15 phút, các nhà báo đã tranh nhau đặt câu hỏi. Đại sứ David Shear đã trả lời thỏa đáng đa số các câu hỏi. Tuy nhiên, không rõ cố tình hay vô ý, ông đã bỏ lửng không trả lời một số câu hỏi khác.
We want to hear from you. We have an issue regarding about the exchange of media from Little Saigon to the Vietnam. When you do that, please tell us.
We're aware of the problem relating to Little Saigon's interest in broadcasting in Vietnam, and we raised this with the Vietnamese. Progress has been slow, but we'll continue to raise it. We understand the need for the Vietnamese to open up their market to all kinds of news organizations, and we support Little Saigon TV's effort to establish a presence in Vietnam.
So when you come back to Hanoi, did you bring up that issue to the high-ranking authority in the North, in Hanoi, for which allow to just exchange the media, from the Vietnamese community in Little Saigon to in Hanoi, for we can cover all activity, between the two countries?
We have raised this issue with Vietnamese officials, and will continue to do so. It's going to be I can't guarantee success right now, but we're working on it.
Maybe we can have someone else ask a question. Yes.
Yes. My name is Le-Jao. I'm a publisher of Việt Weekly. Fortunately, I got a chance to travel Vietnam and as a journalist, but also as a businessman. And what I witnessed is that there's flourish of religious activities there. I mean, and as you mentioned in your presentation, the event in La Vang had 200,000 people attend, and Christmas and Buddha birthday, everywhere there seem to be temples and people freely practice religious activity. So it's true that there's conflict between the leadership of religious entities there with the government, but to me that's the case, seem to be a case of a conflict of power, political power or so, and it's a byproduct of a single party political system. I mean, it's different from our values over here, I agree, but that seemed to me the case. So when people, when we keep saying the human rights violation, I'm not talking about human rights, just focus on religious freedom. When we say that, aren't we mischaracterizing the problem? And if we agree that the case that is political struggle, then does the American government willing to engage in changing the government, or just where the boundary, where do you stop there?
Thank you.
That's my question.
Thank you. Last year I visited the Phat Diem Cathedral in Ninh Binh province. This is a very old cathedral with a very large congregation. And I went there on a Sunday morning, and that cathedral was packed with people who were worshiping freely. That said, I do believe that there remain impediments to worship in Vietnam that we need to work with the Vietnamese to overcome. And we're doing that by engaging the Vietnamese in our human rights dialogue. We're doing that by reporting on the Vietnamese through the annual International Freedom Report. We're doing that by maintaining very close contact with religious leaders in Vietnam. I've also visited house churches in Dien Bien province. I visited a Protestant unregistered house church. I visited a Catholic unregistered house church. They were full of people, and they said to me that when we pay attention to those churches, local officials treat them better. So we're going to keep that up.
Okay, my question.
Can I switch to opportunity?
you mentioned a lot about maintaining freedom of navigation and peaceful resolution. There's a little, there seems to be a little strategic thing in that is some people sort of prefer, obviously, the law conflict with China. And some people are thinking that whether or not the countries of Southeast Asia should negotiate as a bloc, as ASEAN, with China versus like China bilaterally going to one country at a time. Does the U.S. have a position on that, or can you give some analysis as to which one has, what consequences?
We would like the ASEAN countries to negotiate with China to arrive at a code of conduct for the South China Sea, which will help claimant countries manage their differences. We would like those countries to resolve those differences, but we don't expect that it will happen in the near future. And in the meantime, we'd like them to manage their differences peacefully. And a code of conduct arrived at through a group process between China and ASEAN is, we think, the best way to achieve that successful management of the problem.
Okay, my name is Juno with the Daily News. Two questions. The four issue that you talked about this morning in between relation between the U.S. and Vietnam, which is more important? Are they all for the same, or sometimes one is more important than the other? That's the first question. The second question is regarding the CPC. A lot of organizations, international organizations, ask the U.S. to put Vietnam back to CPC list. Have you ever, as an ambassador, raised that issue or make recommendation to the State Department?
First, with regard to our priorities, when you arrive at the office in the morning and your inbox is full of problems, often what's most important is what's in your inbox or what's in your email. However, as I said in my comments during my presentation, human rights is intimately related to our economic relationship. It's intimately related to our diplomatic and security relationship, and it's intimately related to the relationship between our two peoples. So in that regard, human rights has to be extremely important.
For the Orange County, for the more...
The CPC, you haven't talked about CPC yet.
The U.S. government, the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi and the U.S. Consulate General in Saigon remain critically interested in the issue of freedom of religion in Vietnam. And as I mentioned earlier, we engaged the Vietnamese on this intensively and vigorously at the diplomatic level. And we do this with the senior-most Vietnamese leaders. So we did remove Vietnam from the countries of particular concern list in 2006 because we thought that Vietnam did not rise to the level for including countries in CPC list in the law. The definition in the law is very narrow, but that we took Vietnam off the CPC list doesn't mean that this is not an extremely important issue for us. We work this issue every day.
Regarding the TPP, the last.
We'll go to her and we'll go to the two gentlemen.
In Orange County, this is just a very local issue, but there have been resolutions in Garden Grove, Westminster regarding tensions between officials coming from Vietnam and visiting Vietnam Americans and not allowing a 10 days notification, things like that. And I wanted to know if you agree with those resolutions, whether there should be some sort of barrier in between those visits, or if not, if you have other recommendations of other methods that they can use as well.
We understand the intensity with which the people of this community view human rights in Vietnam, and we support strongly their efforts to improve the human rights situation in Vietnam and to send the strongest possible messages to Vietnamese officials. Now, with regard to those particular resolutions, this is a democratic country, and local communities can pass resolutions similar to those, but I ask that you look at this from our perspective as diplomats in Vietnam as well. Because for me, to engage the Vietnamese on economic issues, to engage them on people-to-people issues, and to engage them in human rights, I have to be able to travel in Vietnam wherever I want to go. And the more restrictions that are placed on Vietnamese officials in the United States, the more likely it is the Vietnamese will put restrictions on the travel of me and my staff. And that's something that I think would set back the relationship between the U.S. and Vietnam.
We'll go to right here.
My name is Kim Hu from the Vietnamese Public Television in Washington, D.C. area. DC. Now, the issue relating to the consulate, the general in Saigon. Okay, now the public really want to provide some of the tip information regarding that issue maybe happen in the future. Now, Herr Ambassador, do you have any comment and suggestion to the American people or in the Vietnam regarding to the issue maybe happen in future under your leadership?
If anyone has any information relating to consular malfeasance anywhere, including in Vietnam, please contact us or contact the Department of Justice.
How about a security purpose for the people? Security people, when they provide the information, what is the best protection and security for people when they release that to your office?
You mean American
when
people?
Release the information.
Protection
it's very
for
dangerous for them when they release that kind of information, especially in Vietnam.
Well, with regard to people in Vietnam, we do everything we can to ensure the confidentiality of things
Like what?
people tell us. We have our ways of ensuring confidentiality that we've used for a long time. Just methods of meeting people, and we do everything we can to ensure that confidentiality. But I've never experienced a case in which a Vietnamese in Vietnam has offered information and requested security protection. I've never experienced a case like that.
Okay, we have two more questions, one here and then one here.
This is Lan Vu from Formosa TV. Regarding the TPP, recently in Hanoi, the 24th of April, there's a press conference by Embassy of U.S. And in the conference, an embassy official really said that Vietnam is one of the countries that will be benefit from TPP, and U.S. will be fully support Vietnam to do that. Two questions. The first question is, what is the benefit of Vietnam joining that, and also what is the challenge for Vietnam to join that? The second question is, today we see like some kind of different message from you regarding like CPC and TPP. Is this considered like two different statements to two different audience, Vietnam and Vietnamese overseas here?
With regard to Trans-Pacific Partnership, one American economist associated with the Peterson Institute think tank in Washington has estimated that in the first years after implementation of TPP, Vietnam's exports will increase by about 26%. He's also estimated that Vietnamese gross domestic product will increase by about 11%. So the TPP represents a big increase in economic activity and possible benefits for Vietnam. There are also benefits for the United States. We expect to export more to Vietnam. We expect that American investors in Vietnam will have an easier time doing business in Vietnam. And so this is an agreement which we will benefit from mutually. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, one more question.
What is the
One last question, and then one last question from someone else, and then one last question from someone else, someone who has an answer.
My last question, if any American, the Vietnamese go into Hanoi or go to Saigon, and they, in the public, they issue their view, I don't like the Communist Party, should they put in jail? and any the action to protect them from the U.S. Embassy.
We have stated repeatedly that we support freedom of expression in Vietnam, and we believe that people should not be detained for freely expressing their political views in Vietnam, wherever they're from, whether they're from the United States or from Vietnam or from some other country. And should an American citizen be detained in Vietnam, our job is to ensure that their rights are respected.
Thank you.
Thank
everyone, for the press
you.
conference.
Thank you very
And,
much. It's a rare opportunity to have our ambassador here to listen to us. I think both the community and the news media have had an opportunity to interact. Hopefully this is just the first of many meetings. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Kính thưa quý vị khán giả của chương trình Phố Bosa TV, buổi họp báo riêng với lại các giới truyền thông đã chấm dứt phần giới thiệu, phần nói chuyện của ông Ambassador, của ông đại sứ Mỹ ở Việt Nam, David Shear. Hai câu hỏi của Phố Bosa TV, ông đại sứ có lẽ đã vì một lý do gì đó đã không trả lời phần 2 của câu hỏi. Hy vọng chúng tôi sẽ có dịp để mà tìm hiểu câu hỏi này với ông trong những lần gặp tới. Cảm ơn quý vị đã theo dõi chương trình Phố Bosa TV.